Speaking of which, doing a bit of this. Let me just come on, I've got my little seat there, look. Got my little gubbins. I don't think it's come out too bad. There's a bit of pitting, but it was a massive hole, in fairness. See them contours there, boys? Bit of craftsmanship. Well, try my best rather. There's a bit of pitting there. So, it's so bloody awkward to work with. It's not real fine. It's not easy anyway. But we're getting there. I'm pleased with myself, you know. Big myself up a little. I think it's come out alright, to be honest. Slap a bit of the old paint on it. No one noticed, hopefully.
Authorised encampments. Officers will be able to shut down illegal camps for verbal abuse, litter, noise and nuisance bonfires. Travellers could also be evicted if they prevent communities from getting into sports fields, parks or car parks, or if they cause damage to property or the land itself. Travellers who breach the new law will face a 3-month prison sentence, a fine of up to £2,500, or both. What do you think? Is it right that the police are getting more powers in this area, or does it further demonise an already marginalised community? If you are a traveller, or if you have experience of living near an illegal encampment, we'd love you to get in touch, hear your views. You can text 85058.
The laws have changed today, boys.
909-693.
That traveller law's come in.
Travellers, there is no doubt that in some areas of the country this is a doorstep issue. I'm just thinking about where I live. I live kind of on the edge of London and the home counties, and it perennially comes up round here when a small group of people take over a local wreck for a few days, and then there's complaints about litter and noise and so on. So it's definitely an issue, and certainly an issue for Conservative MPs in those sort of those leafier parts of the country, for want of a better expression. And under this legislation, so this is before Parliament at the moment, but given the government's majority is almost certain to become law, there's going to be a new criminal offence where if an individual resides or intends to reside on land which is not their own, the police can basically chuck them off, seize their property, including vehicles. Now, the test
Hear that, boys?
is the offence will be committed if a person who is residing or intends to reside basically causes some kind of nuisance as part of that, or is likely to cause significant damage, disruption or distress. Now, the interesting thing is how that's now being defined.
So it's the police's interpretation of damage, destruction, etc., etc.
Almost 30 years, actually. Travellers or gypsies who are on private land without authorisation, they could effectively only be prosecuted under sort of like standard powers for causing damage or threatening and abusive behaviour. Under this new proposal, they could face prosecution for littering, noise, smell, bonfire smoke, people feeling intimidated. It's going to be interesting actually how you test when someone's intimidated or not. People fearing leaving their homes and walking past an encampment. And
Boris is bringing Thatcher's ways back.
Accessing sports fields, parks, or
That's what Boris is doing.
or where there's just simply property on the land that has been damaged. So this is quite a widening of the powers Naga to actually deal with it. It's going to be controversial, partly because a lot of people in the gypsy and travelling community say it is a sledgehammer to crack a nut. But the government feels confident that it's actually doing what the public wants, because there have been surveys which show that people do want the police to have extra powers to deal with unauthorised encampments.
Yeah, I suppose the difference is it's what you can see now rather than what you can feel, isn't it? And we're going to be talking about that shortly. Do we know how the traveller community has reacted to this and how it will be able to deal with some of these changes?
I think there's a lot of despondency among gypsy and traveller communities over this, partly because they see this as part of a long-term narrative going back. This isn't just a Conservative Party issue, I should stress. This was a big issue when Labour were in power under Tony Blair as well. And the general thrust is this: successive governments for 30 or 40 years have allowed a situation to develop where there are too few authorised sites available for people who are ethnically Gypsy, Roma or travellers, Irish or Scots travellers, too few sites for them to stop where they wish to continue a lifestyle which is actually protected under
I've got
equality.
the English Romany there, but
Just
never
talking about
mind.
some of the figures, and I think this is the really interesting thing here. There's probably about 65,000 people who could be defined as travellers in the UK. In practice, not many of them actually still move around. A lot of them are basically stationary, living on their own sites, travelling as part of their identity, so the caravan kind of element is important to that, but they want to live in their own communities. We've got the latest available figures from the government say there are 23,000 caravans in the UK, so they're people they're defining, as I understand it, who are actually living in caravans which could move, yeah?
Yeah.
About 6,500 of those are on authorised socially rented sites, perhaps sites run by the local authority, that kind of thing. Twice that number on privately owned sites, and that includes an awful lot of people, lots of communities where travellers have actually clubbed together to buy land, to own it themselves. Only 2,000 people on unauthorised sites, and of those, only 700 are on unauthorised private land. Now, what that means is that there's about 3% of people who are in this kind of this kind of category that the government's trying to attack deal with. Sorry, with this legislation. So it's a very, very small number, and effectively this is part of the issue here, is that an awful lot of people are just quietly getting on with their lives on sites. I have two very close to me, for instance, they've been here 20 years. Those sites, people just quietly get on with their lives. But every now and then a community then has this issue where people turn up and take over a piece of land. And in essence what the travelling community is saying is because there are too few sites for those who want to exercise their right to still travel, and the government's basically got to help them by providing sites.
Hence the phrase using a sledgehammer to crack a nut, because it's the noise that's generated about that small number of people.
Yeah, I think it's this is a really, really sensitive
Yes.
issue in communities. I mean, let me just take you back to one instance I remember close to me recently, where a number of travellers arrived to actually attend a funeral, and there was absolute uproar on the local face group here, where I lived, about this, and very, very quickly rumours started flying around that people were being intimidated. I remember one particular post on Facebook suggesting that people from this site were using the local Tesco as a toilet, which wasn't true, because I went down and checked it out and it wasn't happening. Now, I went to talk to some of these travellers and I said to them, well, why are you here? What's going on? And they said, look, we're here for this funeral. And they said, look, we're going to be gone by Thursday. And lo and behold, they were gone by the Thursday. But the problem is that some of those didn't clean up after themselves.
Do you
had the unauthorised...
mean using the toilets in Tesco's?
No, literally, the suggestion on Facebook with these people who are actually urinating actually in the aisles and things like that. So it was. So you have a lot of tension very often builds up in communities because of what people see. They say this is this outrageous encampment taking over our wreck, and then you add into that an issue, complicated issues around misunderstanding between two completely different communities, ways of life. Very often in conflict, and you add into that the small minority who just are going to be potentially prejudicial towards each other, or discriminatory, and it's quite a complicated, toxic mix, and that's why it's not just travellers, but a lot of experts in this kind of area of law looked at this down the year. Academics have said across Europe, it's not just here. If you provide sites and you actually help people to basically run their own,
And there are no sites in England.
By and large, you're reducing the
Not how there is in Europe.
Coming into conflict with the settled community.
It's very unusual, boys. Seeing the bird just crouch on the floor like that. Must be sick. No, he just looks lazy. He's got up and turned round. If I throw some bread out, I wonder if he'll move. Lazy git. What's Chalky doing in Northampton?